Pip is dying. My kid is dying in a place called South Vietnam. There isn't even supposed to be a war going on then. But my son is dying. It's to laugh. I swear it's to laugh.
Hello and welcome to the Twilight Pwn, the internet's third most popular Twilight Zone podcast. My name is John. I'm joined by my co-host Fred.
Hello.
How are you doing this week, Fred?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I got nothing. How about you?
I don't know. It's my kiddo's second birthday today, so I figured it's time to hunker down and alone in a room.
Happy birthday, sweetheart. All right, well let's
I don't know.
dedicate this. Well, this episode is kind of appropriate.
Yeah,
for
no,
that.
it's
kind of in a dark way.
Yeah.
What are we talking about this week?
This week we are discussing In Praise of Pip. This is a 5th season episode. It's actually the first episode of the 5th season. It was the 121st of the production run. It aired originally on September 27th, 1963.
Submitted for your approval one Max Phillips, slightly the worse for wear maker of book, whose life has been as drab and undistinguished as a bundle of dirty clothes. And though it's very late in his day, he has an errant wish that the rest of his life might be sent out to a laundry, to come back shining and clean. This to be a gift of love to a son named Pip. Mr. Max Phillips, Homo sapiens, who is soon to discover that man is not as wise as he thinks. Said lesson to be learned in the Twilight Zone.
A lot to unpack there. Just jumping forward to the end of the episode, is that really the lesson that he learns?
No,
okay.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, just don't get your hopes up for, by the end of this episode, you're not really going to learn that man is not as wise as he thinks.
I'm not sure Serling watched the entire episode. He gets a basic idea.
It's the 5th season,
I do feel like he could have stepped up his intro a little bit to match this episode a bit more.
It's a little boilerplate Serling. I mean, it's even got the, submitted for your approval, kind of like the most identifiable cliche,
even though it actually wasn't used that often intro. Yeah,
true. Yeah, and then it also just goes into the this guy's a loser. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's kind of.
And and he learns that one in the bush is worth two in the hand, I think, or something or other.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a paint by numbers Serling intro. Which brings us to our own paint by numbers Serling intros. We like to do Rod Serling style intros. I feel like it's my turn.
I thought I was up, but it didn't really matter.
Okay.
Administered for your acquiescence. One Max Phillips, a maker of book, a drinker of makers of marks, and a dad of deadbeat, whose life has been as unappetizing and slightly frozen in the middle as an Applebee's entree. But tonight, he's sending the meal back to the kitchen with instructions to exchange it for the Triple Kickers assortment plate of love, faith, and Southwestern-style buffalo shrimp, the favorite dish of his son, Moomy Sapien Pip. Max Phillips, maker of books, about to become taker of trips down less taken of roads that leads to the zones of Twilight.
Here's a question. I've actually never eaten an Applebee's, and what you described to me sounded more like something
it's
you
more
have at
Chili's.
Yeah.
It's more of a Chili's Fridays dish, but
I'm sorry.
I have only eaten at Applebee's once or twice, and I decided I don't need to do that ever again, even for kitsch or amusing.
Yeah. It's funny because as the podcast resident snob, I feel like that was me pointing out is that what they have at Applebee's? But I have eaten at Chili's a lot, so I don't know what that means. Is Chili's the more high class of those establishments?
Yeah, I would definitely peg it above Applebee's. I mean, Applebee's tries to be the friendly neighborhood place. But I don't know. I mean, this is gonna ruin our sponsorship deal. We were just hammering out. But
yeah. Well,
in my hierarchy, if I had to rate the three, and listeners, chime in, please.
Yeah.
But I think you're gonna have your Chili's at the top, your Fridays below a couple steps, and then a few more steps down, you're getting to Applebee's.
Yeah, kind of like a nice Gap, Old Navy, Banana Republic relationship there. Anyway, so yeah. Is it my turn?
Yes.
I thought I was trying to get out of it by a lot of Applebee's talk. All right. Mm-hmm. Meet Max Phillips. By profession, he is a maker of book, manner of con, and sharker of loan. By personality, he's flea-bitten, dust-ridden, and cruel enough to name his firstborn son Pip. Which brings us to the titular Pip, who tonight we find ourselves in praise of. Pip's primary praiseworthy characteristics are his cuteness and his skill at surviving surgery. However, Pip possesses a peculiar power, the ability to make his father chew scenery in an abandoned amusement park. In the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
I like the maker of book. That was.
I think we both
jumped
you're like,
on
all
that.
right, I know what we're doing.
Yeah,
okay, here we
pretty
go.
much. Got it. This is the 5th season episode of the Twilight Zone. Check it out in advance because we're about to spoil the plot, which starts with, kind of interestingly, it starts in Vietnam. But this, of course, is 1964, I want to say. So well before
63.
63. Yeah. But well before the period that you typically associate with Vietnam. We see a soldier being carted in. It's Pip Phillips. And a doctor's looking him over, and it seems that he may not make it. We cut quickly to a New York City or just city apartment, and Jack Klugman is waking up. So it's kind of cool how quickly we go from location to location very early on in the episode.
Yeah, it was pretty great that they were able to film on location out there in South Vietnam.
Yes, exactly. Francis Ford Coppola's in Praise of Pip. Klugman is waking up as if from a bad dream. We very quickly see that he is Pip Phillips' father. He's got kind of a weird set of pictures on his nightstand. It's Pip is like a 9-year-old and Pip is a grown-up soldier, and in the 9-year-old picture, Pip's got a sailor hat on.
It's a little on the nose, but easy filmmaker shorthand. It's setting up so we'll know whatever may happen in the future. We'll know what a 9-year-old Pip looks like.
Yeah. We get a knock on the door, and Klugman's landlady comes in.
Landladies play a pretty pivotal role in the Twilight Zone, don't they?
Well,
I feel like there's more landladies than aliens in the Twilight Zone if you were to count them all up.
Yeah, a dimension not of sight and sound, but of rent and maintenance.
No one owns. Everyone rents in this zone.
Exactly, true. Especially in this time, maybe renting as opposed to owning your apartment is a sign that you're kind of a loser, which would definitely make me a loser. But I also think that there's just a kind of a thing of a certain era where everybody lives in a boarding house and the landlady has kind of a bantery relationship with them.
Right.
And it's a character that comes up in plots a lot because it's they're after you for the rent, and that's a good way to signify that you're broke.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. You don't have to worry about any kind of real relationship building when you can just send the landlady in and let her be a little soundboard for a minute. You could still have a lonely guy, and a lonely guy's still gonna have a landlady.
Yeah, totally.
It's kind of like a bartender without having to put a guy in a bar.
Yeah, exactly. Getting back to the episode, Klugman has kind of a weird flirtatious relationship. You kind of sense that he's working up his way to pay the rent another way.
It's kind of a kingpin feel to it.
There's a lot of maybe prolonged body physical contact between him and his landlady. Apparently, Klugman has a visitor. The visitor is a young man. This kid named Georgie, who apparently placed a bad bet with Klugman, who's a maker of book, a bookmaker.
Yeah, he must have gone large on Ronda Rousey. Fred?
Did Ronda Rousey lose?
Yeah.
Oh, she did.
We're being topical.
I didn't realize she lost against who?
The woman that she fought. That's as far as I can.
Sports analysis for the Twilight Zone. You talk big game about knowing, but once you scratch the surface, all right.
I don't know every single sport. For some reason, this is the top news on so many things I look at. It's I didn't know that women's UFC, but apparently she had an unbelievable record, and then she lost a huge upset last night.
Well, but had you never heard of her at all?
Never.
Before?
Never.
Oh, really? See, I had. That's interesting.
Well, you like fringe sports like football.
Yes, only the world's most popular sport, popular fringe sport. Back to the episode. Yeah, it's this kid Georgie who placed a bad bet with Klugman, and now he's got to pay up 300 bones. Or
inflation,
calculation. Did I catch you off guard there?
You did. I was still kind of reading about the Rousey thing.
Nice to know you're really focused on the episode. Okay, yeah. So it was $2,300 in today's money, which is a sizable chunk of change.
Yeah.
George apparently took the money from his job and was going to win it and pay his job back, but he lost, so now he's kind of screwed. We really quickly cut to the next scene where Klugman is visiting his boss. What do you call like a bookkeeper's boss? The office manager of
the big book. I don't know. I mean,
is he like a gangster?
Maybe he's like the exec VP in charge of bookmaking.
Yes, exactly. Assistant vice president of media buying. The guy's chewing him out for going easy on the kid, on Georgie, because apparently Klugman gave him his $300 back so the kid wouldn't get in trouble with his job. And the regional manager is saying, like, you're going soft on him.
Yeah, he shows his figures for the month. They're no good.
Yeah. At this point, the kid, Georgie, gets dragged in, and he's either been worked over or somebody did his makeup really bad.
I was going to say, they've made him look through the shoe black telescope in both eyes. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, or like he, put on a lot of mascara and then, like, watched a sad movie or something.
Yeah, and then watched this episode.
Yes, exactly.
Between these two scenes, I felt like this whole thing was kind of like the anti-scene from Big Tall Wish, where like that guy walked in and they were both dancing around whatever the hell was happening. I really liked this episode. I'd kind of forgotten this part. It's a subplot, but I felt like it was laid out pretty cleanly. I got what was happening when, he gets to the big boss and the boss is it's like, okay, I understand everything.
I think in this episode, like, because they're having the discussion in like a den of crime, they're free to like dispense with the euphemisms and just be like, you owe me $300.
Right.
Whereas like in the Big Tall Wish, because they're talking about it like in the presence
in front of
somebody
the
else,
other,
in front of the trainer.
It's
very much like the owl crows at midnight if you slip me a fin on the flip side. And it's like, what? Anyway, Klugman is kind of playing, he's got kind of like a cool character. Like you can tell that he sort of wanted to go easy on the kid, but he doesn't really sweat the boss busting his chops. He's just saying like, what do you want from me? And in the middle of all this tough guy shtick, Klugman gets a call. Apparently a call forwarding to his gangster boss's office.
Yeah, he lets his landlady know, where she can contact him at his illicit crime den.
Yes.
But
well, they have an intimate relationship.
It's your landlady. Says there's a telegram for you.
Yeah, Mrs. Feeney. Open it up. Department of the Army. Read it to me. No. No. No, I'm all right, Mrs. Feeney. Thank you. Thank you.
The clip is sparse, but there's a lot of, Jack Klugman, a great actor. There's a huge amount of emotion on his face. And
I really love this episode. This is probably my favorite part. I mean, it's just like a very close-up, but the way he says no is just so heartbreaking. It's such a, like, it makes me wonder how he wasn't more of like a character actor in more movies. He had a very good television career, and he was in some films, but God, he really hits this so well.
Yeah, it's just the power of understating it. You know what I mean?
The disappointment, like the world has just shit on me again.
Yeah,
oh no,
eloquent, John. Very eloquent.
Well, I'll believe it, but it's just really good.
It's funny. I put on Twitter that we're about to record this episode, and the first tweet I got was from Michelle Neri asking, "How many times did John cry?" And I'm guessing that
it was like on red alert, basically from that moment till the end.
Yeah. No, you're just kind of like squeezing
holding them back. Watching the rest of the episode through like slits. Just like, oh, hold them in. Hold them in.
Think of the Steelers. Think of the Steelers. Anyway, no, it's a very affecting moment. I was definitely, sirens were going off as well. Klugman goes over to the window. He's looking out at this amusement park in the distance. And again, the delivery is very flat, but his eyes are, full of emotion. And he's just talking about, do we have a clip here? Or?
Well, we actually used it for the intro. He mentions how his son is dying in South Vietnam, and there isn't even supposed to be a war on. And we can actually, if you want to, jump into some interesting trivia about that.
Yeah, by all means.
This is addressed online in some different places, but Zikri has it pretty well and concise. Apparently, in the original shooting script, the line was going to be for Laos, not Vietnam.
Right, yeah.
But the standards and practices, or whoever, the Forest Research Group who went over the script, said the Geneva Treaty on the Neutrality of Laos stipulated that all foreign troops should be removed, blah, 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 more or less. We do have some troops in South Vietnam that are not in combat capacity, but it might look better if we use them so we don't embarrass the Laotian government.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then the line was, there isn't even a war there, and the research group said, in South Vietnam it is common knowledge there is a civil war, but U.S. troops are not supposed to be fighting there. Suggests there isn't supposed to be a war there.
Yeah.
So it ended up being a weirdly
prescient
line. Moment. Yeah.
Just to go off of that, it's not exactly clear. Martin Grams has some similar info about it, but
sure.
It's probably the first time that a casualty of, I guess, the Vietnam War, whatever you'd call it, the conflict in Vietnam was depicted in popular culture, and also possibly the first time that U.S. Special Forces were depicted in camera, because I think that was a post-World War II like invention, essentially. Back to the plot. Klugman is obviously sort of overcome with emotion about his son, Pip.
The big boss kind of tries to give him a pat on the back and sorry your kid's dying, buddy. And so he's kind of fed up. He starts talking back.
When I wasn't out conning for you, I used to take him to the amusement park. You know something, Moran? I think you're wrong. I think I've given something away. My kid, Pip. The good part of me. The clean part. Part I was proud of. George, you put this back where it came from.
Now, look, Maxie, I'm sorry about your kid and all, but that don't give you...
No more out of you! No more! 20 years ago, I should have spit right in your eye. 20 years ago, I should have known a little time a man has to raise his son.
It's a clear little emotional thing where he's feeling guilty about his son, and so he's going to try and, let Georgie go, who's like the same age as Pip-ish.
Classic transference.
Yes, exactly. He really needs to talk to somebody about that.
Yeah, Freud would have a field day with this one, am I right?
Yeah. I mean, there's actually some Freudian stuff we should maybe get into later. But anyway, he tosses the money to Georgie, but one of the goons is like about to pull a gun. Klugman pulls a knife, and the situation escalates really quickly. And Klugman jumps forward and stabs the goon and knocks the big boss gangster over the head. But in the process, he's winged.
I don't know if this is just because we watched it recently, but I felt like this whole sequence had a real Han shot first feel to it. Like the gunshot stabbing happens so quick, one next to another, it becomes hard to tell who's the aggressor or what exactly is happening.
Yeah, I don't know. If you see Serling's Laserdisc edition of this one, it's made a lot more clear, but a lot of the fans are up in arms.
Klugman's the lovable rogue in that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, like, it's clear that the situation is escalating. Like, whether Klugman jumps forward or gets shot first, it doesn't really matter. Like, his main goal
Fred,
is
you just keep being a Lucas apologist. It doesn't matter. It's all fine.
But I mean, I sincerely, for the case of the story, even if he stabs the guy first, it doesn't really matter, because he's like, it's clear that the guy at least is going to stop the kid from leaving, and Klugman is so overcome with emotion, he's not really thinking clearly. He and Georgie sort of stumble out of the office. Georgie runs off, and Klugman, shot, wanders over to the amusement park and soliloquizes for a bit.
Oh, God. If I could just talk to him, you see? If I could just see him. If I could just tell him.
And then we cut to the operating theater.
The MASH unit.
What's it called? Yes, the MASH unit. Hawkeye's going to work.
We get another example of the Twilight Zone medical professional practice. I don't know how to define this exactly, but here you go.
All right, my friends, that'll do it. See if he'll survive for an hour. If he can hang on for that long, I think he'll hang on for good.
It's like every medical student from the Twilight Zone had to take a class in creative writing.
My written down joke was, all these doctors are educated at the Johns Hopkins School for Plot-Friendly Medicine.
Exactly. Always, if they can make it till X, then he'll survive.
Forever. We cut back to Klugman, who, wounded, opens up the gates of the amusement park, which are opened perhaps by Twilight Zone means or not. And he sees a little boy in the distance, and he's kind of thinking, is that Pip? And the boy runs off into a different part of the set. Klugman follows him, and it is Pip, but it's not grown-up soldier Pip, it's Lil Pip. kind of a rapper name there. Lil Pip. It's Kid Pip, played by Bill Mumy of It's a Good Life fame. It's a testament to the power of It's a Good Life that I just kind of didn't trust Lil Pip right off the bat. Like, I'm like, when's he going to kill Klugman? You know?
Maybe I'm just a sucker for this episode. He looks like a year or two older, even though I don't know exactly how much time had passed. Yeah. And I feel like, okay, I can kind of... I mean, there's something odd about him, but I don't find him, like, menacing. I know they're not trying to, and I don't have that, like, residual menace from his time.
I had some flashbacks. He's a convincing, like, kind of cute all-American kid, like a very, like, gee willikers pop kind of actor, but in a good way, not in a totally cheesy way.
Yeah.
You're 10 years old again, Pip. How come you're 10 years old again?
That's what I am, Pop. I'm 10 years old. And it's Saturday night. You said to meet you on the Midway. And I've been waiting. I was afraid you weren't going to come.
But I don't understand. I really don't understand.
Sometimes you don't show up, Pop. Sometimes you're sick or something.
What? You remember what I used to say, Pip? You remember?
I remember.
I used to say, hey, Pip, who's your best buddy?
Hey, Pop, you're my best buddy.
It's not exactly like Pip is totally just a kid and unaware of the weirdness of it all, because he's like, I remember, you know?
Klugman kind of keeps harping on this, why are you 10 years old? And Pip's kind of like, it doesn't matter. We're here together. Like, let's just have a good time. And and then later, just the way he behaves, it's clear he knows something strange is afoot, but he kind of doesn't, but he kind of acknowledges it, but he kind of... It's just, it all plays into an odd mood.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because it's like... It's not exactly like logically airtight, but just because it's like an episode more about emotions, you don't really think about that so much.
I mean, they've already kind of spelled it out, but I feel like they handled his like boozy, absent dad thing, well enough without being super on the nose.
Yeah, definitely. Like the kid would think like, oh, like you're sick or something, like not really perceive exactly like the kid's not gonna be like, quit your boozing, old man, like. Yeah, it's well handled. There's a tendency to, like, when you're portraying like an alcoholic father, just to portray them as like all bad or something like that, But I think the reality of it is that, like, he cares for his kid a lot, and they do have good times together. It's just that they're like, burdened by this. Anyway, the amusement park sort of comes to life, and everything turns on, and Klugman and Pip have some, I'd say, borderline manic quality time where they're just, rushing from thing to thing and like shoveling cotton candy down their mouth. And, it's a nice little montage, but yeah.
It's an interesting montage because it's like what they're doing is sweet. It's father and son at an amusement park having a good time, but it's shot with canted angles. It's obviously dark. It's an abandoned amusement park. So I think it's got this, again, interesting mix of like, it feels kind of nice, but it also feels a little creepy and like this isn't right. They're trying to have this moment, but it's off.
Yeah. There's also a shot where like they're getting cotton candy, and there's no other people, which I think makes it gives it another weird quality of strangeness. I also, this is maybe small quality, but did you feel like Klugman was definitely kind of manhandling Lil Pip? There's a lot of like throwing him around.
There are some moments, which I don't know. In one of them, when he first sees Pip, I kind of just took it as like just the raw emotion of seeing this kid when he thinks he's dying. Like I actually liked it at that time, but I do. He does keep doing it. So this episode actually was groundbreaking and setting a lot of rules for child actors.
Yeah. Bill Mumy had like his skull knocked around a little bit. But anyway, at the end of it, they're at one of those like shooting galleries with little toy guns where you shoot ducks that go by. There's like a little kind of moment where Klugman says like, work the gun, not your jaw, and Bill Mumy takes a piece of gum out of his mouth and then focuses into fire, and they start talking some more, and he gets a strange expression on his face. Why exactly do you think it was this moment when like Pip turns and gets this expression of like, I don't know, distaste or fear or something on his face? Is it just that the hour that they have together is up, or is it something to do with the fact that they're like at a shooting gallery and that reminds him it's supposed to be about the war? What was your take on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I do think that moment is a touch vague. I just took it as like the Cinderella, like time's getting short, like he's about to turn into a pumpkin. But Fred, I don't want to bury the lead here or like, skip something. Now, I noticed it was 25 cents for 15 shots. Now, how many shots would that be in a today's Carney game?
Well, there is a monetary value there. We don't have to. We can just take it that way,
Let's.
All right, let's get out my inflation. In 1963, 25 cents in today's money would be worth $1.94, which would probably get you about the
That's
same.
actually
amount.
kind of expensive, I think. I
don't know.
Play
for
the
like,
shoot game for $1.
I feel like those games are like usually like sort of overpriced.
Well, they do it with tickets, so it always
yeah.
gets so confused.
Let's get out my ticket calculation here. I'm sure there's a ticket inflation engine on the internet somewhere.
We should keep going before I go on my Dave & Buster's rant.
All right. Here we go. Pip takes off, suddenly scared or upset or something. He dashes into a nearby hall of mirrors, and Klugman chases him in, and we get like a nice sort of cinematic sequence where you see multiple Pips and multiple Klugmans chasing each other through the thing, and then finally it ends up with
very Enter the Dragon here.
Kind of. Klugman actually catches Pip, and then there's kind of like a last-minute plea for him to stick around.
You have to understand this. You have to try and listen and understand. All those times when I wasn't around, and when I was out conning and being a shell, or when I was too drunk, and when I dragged you from one rooming house to another.
Doesn't make any difference now, Pop.
It makes a difference, Pip. It does make a difference, because I want you to know that no man... Oh, listen to me, son. No man ever loved a boy any more than I love you. It was because I dreamed instead of did, and I wished and hoped instead of tried. But as God is my witness, Pip, I loved you.
Earlier on, Pip is like, it doesn't make any difference now. Let's just have fun. But now we get the line, it doesn't make any difference. It's too late.
Right, it's kind of like it's too late. Yeah,
which is very clever writing, or very cool, very good line, and very, I think what they're saying is kind of boilerplate. I love you. It doesn't matter type of lines, but just the performances are very impressive. I felt, especially Klugman, obviously.
Well, and give credit to Moomy for not like dragging it down as a kid actor.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's not. We're
not like he's amazing, but
here.
He's not like blowing it away, but he's also not like blowing the scene.
Yeah, exactly. There's the classic thing of Pip running away and Klugman smashing into a mirror, which breaks, and then you get kind of like one last little taste of Pip, where Klugman holds up a piece of the mirror to his face when we see Pip in the background saying, he only had an hour and he's got to go, and then Klugman staggers out into the night, and I think what's kind of cool, they don't really talk about it. But he doesn't really seem wounded the entire time he's with Pip. He doesn't specifically say like, "Oh, my injury's gone," but you just he stops. You just don't see it. And then when he steps out of the house of mirrors, it's back very clearly, and he's kind of staggering, and he leans up against a pillar and delivers a final plea.
Hey God, I'll make a deal with you. I give you the sodden carcass of an aging, weak idiot. I give you me. All you have to give back is Pip. Please, God, don't take my boy. Please. Take me.
Okay, I gotta say, during the episode, I'm weeping like a baby, but just listening to it now, coldly, objectively, I gotta say, he's not exactly delivering a pitch for the Angels. He's kind of, there's this cruddy, rusted out junk bucket of a soul.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it makes it maybe more effective, but yeah, it's hardly like straight from China, one soul delivered by birds.
Exactly.
A new silk soul.
Yeah, I was also kind of glad that they didn't choose to have God be played by Sebastian Cabot with so many like devil deals in the Twilight Zone. You could just imagine like someone popping up in a white suit.
Yes.
Being like, I could take that deal.
Suddenly turns into like a escape clause-esque episode. Right. No, it does not. What happens is that we cut forward in time, and we're still in the amusement park, but it's day.
Well, let's say Klugman collapses into a little pile there.
Yes, he does die.
Yes.
A death maybe Not exactly of dignity, but he dies. He very much dies like splayed out on
Dies
the
as he
ground.
lived.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Splayed.
Splayed, right. We cut forward in time, and it's daytime. Mrs. Feeney is taking alive Pip, who's made it back from Vietnam with Kane. She says, like, oh, your dad, bless his soul, so we learned that Klugman has indeed died, used to love taking you here, and Pip kind of thinly smiles, and he walks over to the shooting gallery and decides to step up and pay his $1.94 or whatever it is.
Work the gun, not the jaws. That's what my pop used to say. Hey, Pop, you're my best buddy. You always were.
You really wish they hadn't given the last line of the episode to that guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's not the best. Yeah,
it's such a tour de force of Klugman, and then to end on that actor's line, it's just like
I won't say his name. Yeah, yeah, it's a little flat. I kind of feel like in a way, like if you're gonna go with a child actor, sometimes it's better to have like a precocious kid than kind of like a flat 19-year-old, who kind of like knows where to stand to hit his mark, but like just doesn't know what emotion is exactly. Yeah, G-Pop, you were my best bud. But thankfully we get one final bit of acting from Mr. Serling himself.
Very little comment here, save for this small aside, that the ties of flesh are deep and strong, that the capacity to love is a vital, rich, and all-consuming function of the human animal, and that you can find nobility and sacrifice and love wherever you may seek it out, down the block, in the heart, or in the Twilight Zone.
Promising a lot there. Nobility, sacrifice, and love. Quite the package deal. Not that we have to break it down too much into logic, but do you think the implication was that like that little bit of advice about like work the gun, not your jaw, was only given to 10-year-old Klugman in the span of that little Twilight Zone time, and if they hadn't had that time together, then a soldier Pip would not have said that?
No,
Okay.
I never got that out of it. I always assumed that was supposedly like one of those things that they went to the pier a fair amount of times, and that was maybe some like a refrain that they would have in the same way of the like, who's your best buddy?
The fact that it's like he's shooting ducks at a carnival and he was a soldier who was injured in the war, I feel like that's like very potentially laden with meaning, like to see like a injured war veteran come to a carnival and just see people kind of gleefully shooting ducks. That could potentially be like a moment of some kind, but it's just kind of not. Or is it? Did I just miss it?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that work the gun, not the jaw thing stands out weirdly during the montage, only to be paid off at the end.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's supposed to have a deeper implication and they just kind of didn't handle it well, or if I'm just being dense.
The way it could make sense is if it's that Twilight Zone-y thing, like the only way that Soldier Pip in the present day knows it is because of the Twilight Zone thing. But I agree, it has the feel of like a recurring thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if they'd shown Pip being injured and he was like lining up a shot on someone while chewing gum, and he hadn't gotten that advice, I honestly don't know.
That might have been a step too far with it.
Right.
I found it very interesting that they don't mention the mother at all. I feel like it's rare for television of this era, and not that I'm an expert, so I don't really know, but just spitballing, to deal with like a father-son relationship that's very like emotional, where the mother is like not involved at all. I feel like it's usually like father-son things are kind of like, it gets a little like, I don't know about that, unless the mom is there to kind of like soften everything out. But I like that, you know what I mean? I thought it was interesting to me. I
guess maybe context makes it harder to tell.
Yeah.
I'm just, like, the only thing I can really think of is like My Three Sons, which was much more lighthearted, goofy. But I didn't wonder where the mom was or feel like it was a weird gap. But I didn't think it was, understand what you're. No, I understand what you're saying is like at the time maybe it would have been thought of as a little bit of an interesting choice.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Even if the mother had been there, or there had been some mention of the mother, I do think it's interesting that it's such an emotional episode where the father's so vulnerable. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's, like, I feel there's something not very 50s, 60s about that in a way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of it's more emotional than an episode like, just totally about men would be or should be, or I don't know. Should be. Yeah. I didn't like it.
What did you think of the idea that the son doesn't necessarily get to resolve things in the same way that Klugman does.
Yeah, well, that's why...
Or does he? Or,
Yeah.
to what extent does he? Because we get this, last shot that kind of tells us everything's okay, and he's like, oh, gee, Dad, I'm your best bud. But in reality, we only got to see a short interaction with 10-year-old Pip, who was clearly kind of like, things are a little fishy in our relationship, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of get the impression by the time the kid's 20, things might have drifted worse.
Yeah.
And, they might have actually needed some work to, really patch things up. So, I don't know.
Yeah, and there was that little bit about how, Klugman earlier on is like, when you got back on the boat, I was going to tell you that I'm going to give up this, character actor, con man way. So I get the feeling that, things weren't exactly patched up. And it's a little too neat, you know what I mean? It's like... I feel like they kind of...
I think it's because of what you're saying. There's not the classic Twilight Zone, or just in a lot of these stories moment where just to steal from what we did last week, just because I can't think of better examples, but there's not the moment where the old Pip pulls out the handkerchief and sees John Wilkes Booth's signature. I think that maybe that's what they're doing with the work the gum, not the job, but it's just not clear enough. If Klugman had won a prize, for Pip there, some little token, and old Pip is carrying it or something, just something that really clarifies that they both shared that moment, and not just Klugman had this moment in his head, kind of.
Yeah, it'd be amazing if older Pip pulled that handkerchief and it said John Wilkes Klugman or something like that.
I thought you were going to say he's got this enormous, big as himself panda or something. He just totes around you're my best buddy,
or
Pop.
Pikachu or something like that. No, I agree. I mean, maybe a speech, something about the landladies, so how did you survive? And he's like, well, on the operating table, I just had a vision of my Pop or something. I don't know, something like that to clarify that there's a one-to-one relationship with Klugman asking for the sacrifice and Pip surviving and all this stuff. I don't know.
That part I got. I definitely I think that's clear enough that Klugman sacrifices his life, Pip lives. It's just not clear to me to what extent Pip understands that or had a chance to really reconcile with the man his dad tried to become at the very end.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because
it'd be cooler if it were more open-ended.
Yeah,
because it's not clear here, it'd be cooler if Pip were still more ambivalent, but he just seems to be yeah, Pop, we had a great time, didn't we? It's it doesn't seem like you did the last time you saw him.
Yeah, well, what you're ignoring is the fact that Pip has seen the episode. So,
True.
I don't know. It would be amazing. I just had it in my head, if Pip just went to the shooting gallery and just kind of looked at it very blankly, and then it just cut to Serling's outro. Jim Jarmusch's The Twilight Zone.
What we doing next?
Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Yeah. Foxtrot, Siegfried, Mark Grams Jr., Siegfried and Grams, and IMDb.
This was one of only 3 Twilight Zone episodes to use the line submitted for your approval. The young actors who played Pips at different ages, Bobby Diamond and Billy Mooney.
Bobby Diamond and Billy Mooney, live at Sands.
They did not meet in real life until 46 years after the program aired. They met at a Twilight Zone convention.
Oh, Monster Bash?
I wish.
Yeah.
The favorite Twilight Zone episode of Rod Serling's daughter, Anne, she noticed that several of the conversations between Pip and Pop were almost identical to banter that she had with Rod.
And you did meet Anne Serling at Monster Bash, so
exactly.
There you go. Nice.
Tom Waits considers this his favorite Twilight Zone episode.
Okay, glad we know
partly
that.
because of Klugman's close resemblance to his own father.
Oh,
so we'll have to put up a hot or not for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty obvious. I didn't feel like we needed to say that Klugman looks like Tom Waits' dad, because everybody knows that.
Yeah. And lastly, the carnival scenes were shot at Pacific Ocean Park, an amusement park in Santa Monica, California.
Pacific Ocean Park is kind of an interesting historical relic. It was built to compete with Disneyland.
Really?
But, yeah, and it's... I looked at the wiki. I mean, I knew about it because I've been to Santa Monica a couple times. And
see, I've been to Santa Monica, but I don't remember an amusement park.
It's not there anymore. That's the thing. It closed. But I'd sort of heard
it just like where the pier is now. There used to be an amusement park there.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I just kind of vaguely knew about it from other pop cultural things, but I looked at the Wikipedia page. Apparently it's referenced in the Beach Boys song, Amusement Parks USA. There's a line, and Disneyland and POP is worth a trip to L.A.
How many songs in the Beach Boys catalog just ended USA?
Well, they had that album.
I love you, girl, USA.
I'm pretty sure that one was probably written by Mike Love. That's not really a Brian Wilson number.
It's like roller skates USA.
Yeah, exactly. Cotton candy times, flag. Anyway, sort of the pier in the park became part of a sort of little neighborhood called Dogtown, which you may know from the documentary Dogtown and Z-Boys.
Dogtown and Z-Boys, yeah.
The only thing from Martin Graham's that we haven't really covered is that apparently Art Carney was wanted for the role of Jack Klugman, who I think would have also done a good job. But,
yeah, I think he would have done great.
But yeah, hard to argue that Klugman was definitely a great choice for this episode. What about bios?
Well, Jack Klugman, lead role, Max Phillips. He was also in the Twilight Zone episodes Death Ship, A Game of Pool, and A Passage for Trumpet.
Oh, yeah, we've closed it out. Klugman Eve. What do we
so
feel about
this? I think
this
we've kind of talked about this.
Yeah, okay. Well,
for me, this is the tops for me.
Yeah.
It's not even really a debate.
Well, let's look at the other ones. We've got Death Ship, which is fine.
Yeah.
We've got Game of Pool, which is fun. And what was the other one?
Passage for Trumpet.
Oh, yeah, we just did that one. Also good,
Yeah.
but yeah, this is it. Yeah, no question. I
feel like a Passage aspires to be at this level, but it doesn't quite really get there. So in my mind, I'd put this, then Pool, then it's maybe Trumpet, Death Ship. It's kind of a toss-up between those two.
Yeah, I mean,
Passage... He's just kind of doing it's just kind of craft work in Death Ship. He didn't even like it, so I don't know.
I think the thing about Death Ship is that, like, it's cool because it's a very different kind of character, you know, like...
Yeah, he's a little bit more take charge, authority
like kind
figure.
of a tough-nosed guy who's, like, you know, annoyed with other people for crying. Yeah, this is his best.
Billy Mooney played young Pip Phillips. He was also in It's a Good Life and Long Distance Call, the 2000s Twilight Zone series and Twilight Zone the movie. I don't know if any actor was in as much Twilight Zone stuff. I guess in theory someone might have hit the 80s series too.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure if that's
check that
true.
out.
Ross Elliott played the Doctor. He was also in the episode Death Ship. Yeah, Russell Horton played Georgie. He was also in The Changing of the Guard. S. John Launer played Moran.
Do you remember Changing of... He was probably one of those kids in Changing of the Guard.
He was probably one of the ones who's like,
You taught me
me about poetry. I had my head chopped off.
The acting was noticeably bad in that episode as well. Well, for the kids anyway. It's funny too because, like, in this episode, like at the beginning, Pip is just an unconscious guy on a stretcher, and you're free to think of him as a good actor, and then he just has the discourteousness.
It's kind of like Kevin Costner in The Big Chill, you know? It's his best work, just laying there.
Anyway.
All right. Launer was also in The Purple Testament, Third from the Sun, and When the Sky Was Open. Written by Serling, directed by Joseph Newman. He also did The Bewitching Pool, Black Leather Jackets, Last Night of a Jockey in this episode. So still got to get to that Bewitching Pool at some point.
At some point, yeah.
Sadly, no fresh MST3K connection for this episode.
No MST3K connects, but I'm sure many of our listeners will have heard that there's a new Kickstarter campaign that Joel Hodgson is doing in conjunction with Shout Factory to sort of bring back the original MST3K concept. Do we want to talk about this, or is it hashtag too political?
Well, I think we're just kind of running low on time.
Oh, we are. Sorry.
We could go ahead and just toss. I think if you just Google "bring back MST3K," you'll get to where you need to be. Yeah. So have a look at the Kickstarter page. See what you think.
Have you given yet, or
not yet? But that's largely because we're in the process of buying a house, and it's also holidays, so money is a little tight, but I'll probably kick something in.
All right, let's move on to IMDb rating, which is
7.8.
Again, very mediocre for a great episode.
Well, I think the last couple we've been getting these like middling ones. I feel like they deserve it. This one I don't quite agree with.
I thought this episode was kind of beloved. I'm sort of surprised by that. It's interesting. So obviously you like it a lot. Let's hear how much.
We've been critical about moments here and there, and I think, is it 100% perfect beginning to end? I wouldn't say that exactly, but I would say going into it, I thought of this as one of my favorite episodes of the series, and watching it again, I was once again like balled up weeping. So I mean, some episodes, they just affect you emotionally, and everything else kind of goes out the window. It's kind of like we've talked about this with comedy episodes in the Twilight Zone. You know, there's a lot of comedy episodes you're just not laughing, and so they're kind of a failure. Sometimes with comedy, it could be like stupid or not that great quality, but if you're laughing, it works.
Yeah.
Same if it's horror, it could be like, well, there's problems with the story, but if you're really scared, you're just going to go along with it, and it's a success. Here, I don't know, maybe there's little problems here and there, but I think Klugman gives his best performance in the Twilight Zone, certainly, and, you know, just a great performance overall, and I'm completely emotionally invested in it. I think it's great. I mean, I personally would give this one of my few 10s.
Oh,
so
ring ding ding, ring a ding ding.
Ring a ding.
I really do like it a lot along the grounds you mentioned. I think it's like just the emotions of it are very powerful and very deeply felt. I do think like the Twilight Zoniness of it is a little vague, you know, or maybe not so interesting. It's just like a kind of classic thing of like, if only I could get another hour with him, and then he gets it, and then he's like, if only I could trade my life for my sons, and then that happens. Like, it's a little kind of pat, and maybe that part of it isn't quite as interesting, but just as we've said, the emotional resonance of it is very deeply felt. So for me, it's like, you know, not trying to be a hard ass. It's not a 10, but it's like an 8 or an 8+, I would say. 8+.
One other thing I really like about it is just showing the range of the Twilight Zone, and Serling in particular. It's a Serling penned episode. Just, you know, when people think of the Twilight Zone, they're probably most likely to think of Time Enough at Last or Eye of the Beholder first, and those are great episodes. But just, you know, there was more to it than just crazy shocks or, you know, good scares here and there. I think it's a testament to the range of the show. Yeah,
and it's also like there are episodes that are more emotional, but oftentimes they kind of like pose like a philosophical question. I mean, you know, for better or for worse.
This is kind of like a weird, it's like a Matheson, like, you know, suspense yarn, but just pure, like, you know, like emotion yarn. Or just get out the Kleenex.
It's not really asking like, what if, as it is like asking like, what if you cry a lot? You know? Anyway, that wraps it up for In Praise of Pip. Thank you. Oh, it was a request, sort of. It was like a request for somebody else.
We got a request from a gentleman named Jesse, sending this one out to a best buddy named Chris.
His son, Chris.
In Praise of Chris.
So yeah, if you want to request an episode, there's lots of different ways to get in touch with us. What are they, John?
Well, you could send us an email at twilightpwn@gmail.com. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at twilightpwn. You could check out our website, twilightpwn.tumblr.com. You could like us on Facebook. You can listen to us on any kind of podcatcher app. And if you're over in iTunes, if you'd leave us a rating or review, we would really appreciate it.
Yeah, please do.
And, to that end, I think we missed... I can't remember, so sorry if I'm double dipping, but thanks to RB Cumber for leaving us a review.
It's funny because at the end of the podcast, I usually try and ask you a question about, like, you know, what if this happened to you or something, and I feel like we've just been running into all these ones that are just very twitchy. Like, it's like...
I got one for you,
right.
Fred. We might have actually done this one somewhere before, but just with Georgie's predicament at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
What's the most... are you a betting man? Have you ever laid a bet?
Yeah, sure.
What's the most you've ever bet on a event? Or
I've actually never bet on an event, but I play poker somewhat regularly, and I've bet up like $100.
How deep have you ever been?
$100, I would say, is about the most I've ever been.
You had to run to Klugman and explain.
Yeah, I think I did. I did win the biggest bet I've ever done, but I've certainly lost much more than that in smaller increments. It feels really good to like win $100, but like,
sure,
if you balance that against like losing like $25 every week for 5 years, it
totally
doesn't really add up. What about you?
Oh, I mean, it's absolutely what you would expect of me. It's the
28 cents,
the money mustache version of things. I've gone to like Vegas and Atlantic City before, and I always just set a specific amount I'm willing to lose. And you know, I think the most I've ever won is, I don't know, $150, something like that. The most I've ever lost is like, I don't know, 200, but it's always in the most coldly calculating, that is the amount of fun I am allowed to have. Yes. Now it is time to sit in my hotel room until we all leave.
Bachelor party craziness. Right. John. All right, cool. Well, I'll talk to you next week, John.
All right, talk to you later.
Bye.